Hello, everybody. Welcome to Talk About Houses. I'm Todd.
I'm Juana.
Okay, so we got asked by a bunch of people to talk about the NAR lawsuit. And so we're going to talk about it. We're going to go through some articles, and we're going to talk more from a macro perspective about the marketplace, how the marketplace works, and then potentially what some outcomes might be, rather than specifics of the trial, because specifics of the trial are sort of unique to the states and the particular circumstances of what happened. Okay, but we'll talk about this because this obviously a lot of people are like wondering what this will mean for them personally, right? That they're buying or selling or however. Okay, so what we're going to do though is we're going to start with the headlines of some articles because I thought the headlines were pretty outlandish. Here's one. U.S. jury finds realtors liable for inflating commissions, awards 1.78 billion damage. So apparently there is some amount that's supposed to be paid, but they were inflated. I don't understand that one. We'll have to figure that one out. Maybe instead of paying 6, they paid 8 and they didn't know about it. I don't know. I don't know what that means. They inflated commissions.
Right, so is that like when you go to the grocery store and the bananas, depending on the grocery store, 59 cents, 79 cents, 99 cents a pound, whatever. So are the 99-cent bananas inflated versus the 59 or 79 cents bananas? I'm not sure.
Okay, here's another good one. Americans are taxed $60 billion in real estate commissions, says attorney who just won a $1.8 billion mega verdict against the National Association of Realtors. Okay, the only taxes you pay when you sell your house are to the government, the transfer taxes. They don't do anything for that. It's no kidding a tax. They just money. They don't add value to the transaction. Literally the only person in transaction that doesn't add any value makes pretty much almost the most money. The government. They just take some of your money, right? Here's another one. Missouri jury finds realtors and brokerages guilty of conspiring to inflate commissions. They had secret messages where 1.7 million realtors all got together and said, let's inflate the commissions. Okay.
That was a massive group text.
That was a massive group test. Okay, so let's go in. Let's talk about, I have a ton of quotes from the article that I want to talk about. Okay, this is what happened that started this. A couple people who sold their houses tried to make an argument that they had no idea that when they were selling their house, that the commission they were paying to their agent, that the agent said, Listen, we'll just say, I don't know what the number was, we'll say it was X, that half of X was going to pay the agent that represented the buyer. I had no idea. I want that money back. I never agreed to pay that money, right? Do you think the average consumer understands when they list their home how the model works right now, like how it's literally worked for the last probably 100 years?
So the short answer is yes. The same way that we understand when we buy other goods and services, we have a pretty reasonable understanding of how that works. The listing agreement spells out how much the compensation is and how it will be spent, meaning that the seller is not liable for paying the buyer's agent separately, that the listing agent will pay the buyer's agent from the amount collected from the seller. And this is pretty typical in all markets. Some markets are a little more granular about it, but overall the gist is the same in all markets because that's part of NAR, National Association of Realtors, cooperative compensation agreement, where we agree to cooperate with each other and we agree to pay the buyer's agent as part of the transaction.
Okay, let's talk about this really quick. There's this argument that the seller would net more money if he didn't have to pay the buyer agent commission. But at the same time, buyers always claim the seller actually doesn't pay any commissions. The buyer pays all the commission because they bring all the money to the transaction. Why does the seller even care then? Because if the buyer knows the seller's paying, let's say, half, they're going to offer that much less, right? Because now they have to bring less money to pay commissions since they're not paying. Isn't this a specious argument? Juana, and then I have a comment after you answer.
Well, yes, it is. Remember the seller a lot of times also contributes to the buyer's closing costs, right? So that means that in effect, the seller gives the buyer a rebate or an incentive to buy the house. So look, I mean, the whole thing's kind of this kind of circular argument, like you said, because the only person coming to the table with money is the buyer. So technically, everybody is paid from the money that the buyer brings to the table. However, everybody's actually paid from the seller's proceeds of the sale. So the buyer brings the money, and the seller then divvies up the money for everybody. So it takes both of them to make it work. If the model worked differently, at the end of the day, you would still be kind of in the same situation because it's still the buyer bringing the money to the table.
Okay, here's a quote from the article. Today, what effectively happens is the buyer agent commissions are added to the sale price of the house, inflating the sale price, says Stephen Brobeck, Senior Fellow at the Consumer Federation of America.
Well, okay, but using that argument, Todd, the property transfer tax is added to that because the seller has to pay for that. Using that argument, the owner's title insurance policy is added to it because that's a seller cost. Using that argument, half the escrow fees are actually added to the price because the seller pays half the escrow fees. So, you can use that argument with every line item that the seller pays in the transaction.
It's not my argument. I'm just reading a quote from the article.
Okay.
I didn't make this argument. If sellers no longer had to pay the buyer agents, there wouldn't be that inflation and buyers could negotiate the commission down and they would end up paying less money. So here's the argument that they're making, the article, that somehow the buyer's going to get all the work on their side done for free and cut out an agent in here and pay less, but the seller still gets the benefit of the robustness of the marketplace where you have all these buyers with agents bringing them to the property so they can get as much money as possible, but then nobody just wants to pay. So it's sort of like, I want the benefits of the marketplace. I don't want to pay for it. So Juana, let me give you an example. Let's talk about a marketplace where there are no agents that involves the sale of homes. What marketplace of home sales does not involve real estate agents?
New home sales.
Oh, new home sales. So obviously they're cheaper because you don't have agents inflating the price, right?
Actually, new homes tend to be 15% or more higher in price than resale homes. And with a new home, the agent at the new home place represents the builder, not the buyer. And most transactions at a new home development do not have the buyer be represented by anyone. So the buyer represents themselves. So this is where you get into the situation where, remember, you go to a new home place and you get the price sheet and there's nothing that's negotiable, right? Not only that, but at a new home place, traditional seller costs are now the burden of the buyer. So that's what it looks like when a buyer doesn't have representation.
Okay, so here's another quote from the article. Broker compensation in the U.S. has typically been about 5 to 6% of a home sale price, with about half paid to a buyer broker. Home sellers complained that this model suppressed competition by keeping commissions for buyer brokers in the 2.5 to 3% range, despite the broker's diminishing role, with many buyers able to find homes independently online. It's counteracting what it's saying in the article. It's suppressing competition by having more agents trying to bring more people to sell the house. That somehow suppresses competition. That's the first ridiculous thing that when I read this, I was like, what? They don't understand how marketplaces work. Here's the second thing. With many buyers able to find homes independently online, Juana, there's been an internet for 30 years.
Right.
Finding a home is not some magical new thing that just happened. Matter of fact, 40 or 50 years ago, you could have gone in the newspaper and you could, for $2, you could have put your house in the newspaper, right? And somebody could have bought the newspaper for a quarter and found your house.
Or picked up the newspaper at the coffee shop that somebody else left behind.
Right. So this idea that finding the house is where the 2.5 to 3% range is a bit ridiculous. The only way I could see this model working is like Australia. And in Australia, So first of all, you only pay for your agent when you're listing.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, you you set the terms. And then
Meaning the seller sets the terms.
seller set the terms,
Yes.
and then the buyer basically, it's like going in a new home place. There is no representation. They don't have an agent. Buyers don't have agents in Australia. The buyers basically, it's like buying from a new home builder. You walk in, you sign a document saying you're not represented, and you just sign the agreement. You sign the terms that the seller wants to sell.
Mm-hmm.
You ready for this? Homes in Australia are astronomically more expensive.
Mm-hmm.
Guys, this is great for you if you're a home seller and you're never going to sell. But if you're a buyer, you're basically screwed if the model changes. Because what they're saying is, I want total control as the seller of the asset. I'm the asset holder. I am the rich dude or gal who owns the house, and I'm going to set my terms. And if you don't want it, have fun, because guess what? Go find another house. They're going to do the same thing. You don't have an agent who can go negotiate, try to get you a better deal. We're going to be like the new home builders and set the terms. We're going to have the same model Australia has. Australia and New Zealand have the same model, highest home prices in any English-speaking country.
Right. So here's the thing. I know all of you are incredibly intelligent and knowledgeable. You watch our channel, so
Yeah.
I know that. And the thing is, though, a real estate agent that has been doing this for a really long time and has done a lot of transactions, has taken a lot of educational courses, maybe has certifications, has a lot of experience, and all of that gets put to work for your benefit as a buyer when you're using their services to purchase a home. Yes, you are, I'm sure, extremely capable of learning everything and negotiating everything for yourself and doing it all for yourself. The question is, if you consider that mastery takes 10,000 hours, are you willing to invest that amount of time
Well, no,
to learn everything there is to learn? Are you really that confident that you can make this work? And I completely acknowledge that not all real estate agents have the same level of professionalism, of market knowledge, of negotiating skills. I completely acknowledge that. I also think that most real estate agents do a good job, and I think that they bring value to the transaction.
Okay, I'll say this. There's a lot of people out there who believe their negotiating ability is just they lowball. They just go, oh, well, if you're offering that, I'm just going to offer less. See, that's how good of a negotiator I'm just going to keep offering low until you finally give up and admit that I'm right and you lower your price. And so I've seen this happen numerous times where there's 3 offers. Some guy comes in and super lowballs. He really wants the house, but he lowballs. He doesn't get the house. Then he finds out that the house sold for a price he totally would have paid.
Mm-hmm.
And he gets super upset that he didn't get the house. Why didn't I get the house? I would have paid that. Well, you didn't. You offered less. Well, that was my negotiating tactic. Well, it didn't work because the seller said, forget them. I'll just accept this offer.
Mm-hmm.
So your negotiation's not that good. If you want the house, then you have to find a way to get it. So I don't know that, that really is applicable here, because here's the bottom line. If the marketplace is less effective, it generally is worse for everybody. Because I'm going to read this next quote here, and then we'll talk about this. There are buyers that aren't going to know the steps to buy a home, Davis said. Remember, this has nothing to do with finding the house. They have to pay for down payment, closing costs, appraisals, inspections. They also have to come up with money to pay for a buyer agent. Some just won't, and they'll get in over their heads, or they won't buy at all. Not having representation will make the market less inclusive. The word they should have used here was less effective, which is absolutely true, right? If you have less people buying, so imagine this: you're a seller, and you decide you just read the article, and you call up an agent and go, "Hey, I'm going to send you this article. I'll pay you, but I'm not paying the other agent." You go, "Fine, I'm charging you X, and then I'm going to pay it. I have to put something in the MLS, so I put $1 in the. I pay agent $1, so it gets syndicated out to all the things, but it's $1.
Mm-hmm.
And then 4 weeks later, you see a house down the road sold, and a house in the neighborhood over there sold, and you're like, "Hey, why aren't you working to sell my house?" And you're like, "Well, I've done all this marketing. It's out there." Well, why isn't anybody coming? Well, because all the people who are the agents who have all the buyers, are ignoring your house because you're not paying them anything. And they've asked their clients, hey, you know that house over on Elm Street? Now they're not paying a commission. So if you want the house, you're going to have to pay me, a commission of this amount. And they're like, you know what? Let's skip. I don't have the money for your commission. So let's skip them and let's go make offers on the houses where they will pay you so I don't have to pay you. Right?
The other thing to consider is that not all buyers can pay their agent. Some, for example, FHA buyers don't have a lot of cash. That's why they're using FHA usually, because it's a lower down payment, so they don't have the extra cash to pay their agent. Some buyers, for example, buyers that are veterans using a VA loan, that is forbidden. They cannot, with a VA loan, pay commissions. So does that mean that veterans don't deserve representation? Does that mean that first-time buyers, who are the most likely FHA buyers, don't deserve representation? The whole thing about affordability and being inclusive, it seems like all of a sudden, the way this looks to me is that it's that buyer representation becomes the domain of somebody that's more of a situation where it's a more exclusive situation of only those who can afford it. And I think that goes against what this is trying to do, is it's trying to make homeownership more inclusive.
Here's a prediction I have. So first of all, this is far from over. This thing is getting appeals being filed. Mm-hmm. It's going to take years to actually get to a point at which there will be anything actually awarded to these people. We're talking years. This is only right now in one state. This isn't for the other states. You would have to file this in every state, okay? This would have to get filed in every state. Let's say the industry decides to change the model to some other less efficient model because real estate agents are paid too much or whatever. My recommendation would be buy a house as fast as you can, buy as many as you can, and never sell any houses that you have, because we're going to end up being Australia or New Zealand. Home prices are going to get crazy expensive because the less efficient marketplace is going to benefit sellers. It's going to make home prices go up. We're not going to have an efficient, liquid marketplace. I think this is going to affect everything to do with real estate. As a listing agent, Juan and I have listed over 3,000 houses. This doesn't affect us not getting to pay, not having to get a buyer agent commission. The only way it would affect us is the listings are going to be harder to sell because we're going to have less people looking at them, because all the agents that have buyers aren't going to care about our listing. They're going to ignore it, or they're going to send over offers and then they're going to be knocking money off the price, because then the buyer has to pay them a commission too.
Well, I think what you're going to also see is you're going to see a lot more buyers making offers with 3% in closing costs.
Or even more, right? Because they may need loan fees too.
Right. So what you're going to see is basically the standard is going to be, somewhere between 3 and 4% in closing costs paid by the seller for the benefit of the buyer, and the buyer is going to use some of that money for closing costs, some of that money to pay off the agent that's representing them. So I think that's going to be a consideration. To your point, as far as marketplaces, look, there are states where brokers can only offer a full service brokerage, so they can't do a la carte. So those states would have to maybe redo their models because of the lawsuits. I think that the unintended consequences are worse for the consumers, both on the listing side and on the buy side. I think it's going to be a long time for this to really hash out.
I know, yeah.
And I don't think it will look... I think there will be change. I don't think that the way things have been done will continue. I think in the short term, you're going to kind of have the Wild West, where you're going to have everybody doing a different thing for a while, kind of trying to find their footing. And by the time it all shakes out, it'll be, maybe several years down the road. And the model will look different than it does today. Whether it's going to be better or not, time will tell, but I think it will be different.
Look, if a house is worth $400,000, why can't you just, as a consumer, as a homeowner, put it on Zillow yourself and have somebody show up at your door and give you $400,000 and save, $20,000 or whatever in real estate commissions. If it's that, if the realtors, real estate agents, realtors add zero value at all, if they don't do anything, they just are collecting excess commissions that they have, conspired to raise. Why not just put a sign out front that says, "I'm selling my house for $400,000. Just make me an offer for $400,000. I'll sell it to you, and that's what it's worth. House next door sold for $400,000."
So, okay, so two things. One, for sale by owners can't put their homes on Zillow right now.
Oh, okay.
So that is a possibility. The other thing is, are we going to still have offers, or are we simply going to have the price the way it is at the supermarket? You don't negotiate your price at the supermarket. Are we not going to have home prices be negotiable?
Well, I'll just make it $500 then. If you want it, you have to pay $500.
Yeah, so I think that'll be really interesting to see the way it all kind of works out. It's we live in an interesting time as far as what's happening in the real estate industry, and there's with all the lawsuits out there, there's a lot of opportunity for us to examine how we do business and maybe find a better model, not necessarily a model maybe that exists in Australia or in other places. Maybe take a little bit of something from Australia, maybe take a little bit of something that we have here and something from somewhere else, and come up with something new, different, better, more efficient, more effective.
Maybe.
That is maybe better for the consumers and maybe better for everyone. I think it's going to be really interesting.
I dispute the fact that there is some conspiracy to raise commissions, because Redfin did their 1% commission back, where they gave 1% of the commission back, and they lost billions of dollars. So if they're inflated, they would have still made money, because this is just excess profit. But how come they couldn't make money? I mean, a lot of companies have offered alternate models, and none of them have thrived. The only companies that have thrived are the companies that operate the traditional marketplace.
Right. And like I said, maybe it's time to look at that and borrow from other places and invent something new.
Maybe. I'm all for it, but I would not expect much to change in the meantime, and I certainly wouldn't expect home prices will now crash.
No.
Because of, I don't know why they would crash.
Well,
this makes no sense.
I think you're going to find some inconsistencies going forward because everybody's kind of trying to figure it out. I think that's a little bit harmful to consumer because, you have to learn different ways of doing things, even in the same market, as different brokerages are trying to figure it out. So I think that makes it difficult for the consumer.
I think there will be a lot of consumers that get frustrated when they go to sell their house. They do not want to pay both sides, which is fine. They don't have to. They don't have to now. You could always opt out of paying that. With our MLS form, actually, you could not pay. You can say, "I don't want to pay the other agent." Everyone does for some reason. If you don't want to participate in the full marketplace, you don't have to. But I think there'll be people who get upset that when their home doesn't sell, and they have discounting to get to sell far more than the commission they would have paid to just bring a whole bunch more buyers who would have paid more money. I think ultimately, to me, and if you think I'm just saying this because I'm in the business, I'll say two things. One is we've done 3,000 listing sites. We don't make our money from that buyer agent co-op. Honestly, I've never liked it. I've always wondered, why am I doing the work to get the client and then I got to pay this other agent 3%? Like, they're not doing the work to get the client. I'm the one that got the listing and am selling the house. So I always thought that was the weirdest thing in the world. The second thing is, and this is the most powerful one, we have flipped numerous homes. We've always paid like at least 3% or whatever everyone else is paying. We pay at least that. We've even paid 3.5% and 4% at times. Remember, we've had listings we've sold. Our own properties that we own. Why would we knowingly offer more money if we know the whole system is some Ponzi scheme or some inflated thing? Because we know we net more money by offering 4%. Listen, I'll say that again. When we offered 4% on our flips, we were making more money than 3% because that 1% brought in so many more people to the thing, we would get more money as the seller. So with that being said, if you're offering less, you're probably going to net less. That's an efficient marketplace. I don't know how this is going to go, but I just know when people start messing with efficient marketplaces, they tend to get screwed up.
Right. So unintended consequences, we've talked about that a lot. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. I think, you know, some things will get better, some things will get worse, as generally happens with change. But hopefully over time, the system will improve, and there will be more transparency maybe, and maybe a higher consumer satisfaction, maybe higher professionalism on the part of agents, because when there's turmoil in an industry, a lot of times you do see people drop out that maybe we're not full-time professionals. So maybe that's going to be an opportunity for people who are on the margins in the industry to find something else to do, and it will leave the full-time professionals in the industry, and they will elevate their level of professionalism. So that's always a nice thing. So tell us what you think. You don't have to agree with us. You know, especially if you have ideas for a different model. I'm really interested in that. I would love to find out, you know, different models that maybe you've seen work, or tweaks on different models that you think might be something that would work here in the US. That would be really interesting. Please contribute in the comments with your real estate related questions. Remember to like the video, subscribe, hit the notification bell, share the video, and we'll see you on the next video. Bye.
Bye.